Papillon looks like the ultimate prison escape story, but the production nearly collapsed completely before a single scene was finished. What happened behind the cameras was rougher, stranger, and far more desperate than anything that ended up on screen. Fact 1. Polanski and Beatty were first. The film that became Papillon was almost made by a completely different team. When Henri Charrière's memoir was published in 1969, it triggered an immediate bidding war. Continental Distributing won the rights for $500,000, with plans to hire Roman Polanski as director and Warren Beatty as the lead. The deal collapsed when their funding fell through. Producer Robert Dorfman then approached Terrence Young, the director of the first two Bond films, and considered Charles Bronson for the starring role. Neither happened. By the time filming began, the director was Franklin J. Schaffner and the star was Steve McQueen. And the man who actually wrote the first screenplay? He was erased from the film completely. Fact 2, Goldman wrote it, was replaced. The first draft was written by William Goldman, who would go on to win Academy Awards for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and All the President's Men. Goldman's version was faithful to the book and considered serious, uncompromising work. It was replaced when the production decided they wanted Dustin Hoffman, Lorenzo Semple Jr., was brought in to expand Dega's role and remove depictions of homosexuality among the prisoners that Goldman had included directly from the source material. After Hoffman signed, Dalton Trumbo rewrote it again, shaping the screenplay into its final form. 3 different writers, each working from a different set of priorities, each leaving their mark on the material. Goldman, who started it all, received no credit in the finished film. But what made Trumbo's version so personal is something almost nobody knows. Fact 3. Script written during filming. When principal photography began, the screenplay was still not finished. The production was committed to a schedule, a cast, and a series of remote locations, and the script was incomplete for all of it. Dalton Trumbo was pressed to travel with the production and write new pages every single day, delivering material to the cast and director while barely staying ahead of what was being filmed. Scenes shot in the morning were sometimes written the night before. The pressure never let up from the first day of shooting to the last. Papillon would be the last screenplay Trumbo ever wrote. He died in 1976. And the reason he connected so deeply to this story goes much further than most people ever realized. Fact 4. The writer had been imprisoned. Dalton Trumbo was one of the Hollywood 10 writers who refused to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1947. Convicted of contempt of Congress, he served 11 months in federal prison and was then blacklisted by Hollywood for over a decade, forced to write under assumed names for a fraction of his fee. His son later said Trumbo was not drawn to Papillon for its adventure. He was drawn to it because he understood exactly what it felt like to be locked away by a system that called itself just. What almost nobody knows is how close the production itself came to collapsing before a single scene was in the can. Fact 5. Budget tripled. Money ran out. Papillon was originally budgeted at $7 million. By the end, the negative cost had reached $15 million, borrowed at 20% interest. At one point during the Jamaica shoot, the production ran out of money entirely. Producers flew to Paris with raw footage to show unedited rushes to potential backers. For 3 weeks, nobody on the production was paid. When McQueen found out, he went directly to the producers and told them, "Unless everyone gets paid, I don't work." The situation improved after that. McQueen's intervention kept the production alive at its lowest point. The finished film earned over $22 million in the US alone in its first year. But saving the production was not the only time McQueen's contract caused serious tension. Fact 6. McQueen demanded top billing. McQueen received $2 million to play Papillon. Hoffman received $1.5 million. But McQueen had one additional demand before he would sign. First billing above Hoffman in all advertising and promotional materials without exception. This was not a small point. Hoffman was fresh from The Graduate and Midnight Cowboy and arguably at a higher critical peak at that moment than McQueen. The studios knew it. The producers knew it. McQueen held firm regardless. The producers agreed. His name appeared first on every poster and every trailer. Hoffman accepted the arrangement without public comment. The man whose real story the film was based on felt his own quiet tension about who was telling it. Fact 7, Charrière died before release. Henri Charrière traveled to Jamaica as a consultant, advising the filmmakers on conditions he had actually lived through, the specific routines, the social hierarchies, the details that no production designer could invent from research alone. He gave his blessing to McQueen in the lead role, though he and the producer had originally preferred a French actor. Charrière died of lung cancer in July 1973, months after filming completed, but before the film was edited and released. The premiere was in December 1973. The man who survived Devil's Island never got to see what the finished film made of his story. But the prison they built for it was more accurate than anyone expected. Fact 8. Prison built from real blueprints. The production obtained the original architectural blueprints of the real prison at Saint-Laurent-du-Maroni and used them to build the replica in Jamaica. This was not an approximation. It was built to the exact dimensions and layout of the structure where Charrière had actually been held. Every corridor, every cell block, every guard post was measured from the original plans. When filming wrapped, footage of the real abandoned prison in French Guiana, reclaimed entirely by jungle growth, was shot for use under the end credits. And while they got the prison exactly right, the French authorities had been quietly disputing the whole underlying story for years. Fact 9, McQueen's Oscar snub explained. Many critics and industry observers considered Papillon McQueen's finest dramatic performance, and he received no Academy Award nomination for it. Two theories circulated. The first, McQueen had told the Golden Globe Committee he would accept the win but would never attend the ceremony. The second, he had recently begun a relationship with Ali MacGraw, who was married at the time to Robert Evans, one of the most powerful studio executives in Hollywood. McQueen did receive a Golden Globe nomination. The Academy passed him over entirely. Whether politics, personality, or both were responsible has never been established. What nobody expected was what happened at a dinner in Jamaica that produced one of the most famous songs of the decade. Fact 10, Hoffman challenged McCartney. During the Jamaica shoot, Hoffman found himself at dinner with Paul McCartney, who was vacationing in Montego Bay. He challenged McCartney to write a song on the spot about anything. Since Picasso had just died, Hoffman requested something around Picasso's reported dying words, "Drink to me, drink to my health, you know I can't drink anymore." McCartney wrote a demo that evening. It became Picasso's last words on Wings' 1973 album, Band on the Run, one of the most celebrated albums of that decade. A chance dinner during a prison epic produced one of McCartney's most discussed post-Beatles recordings. But that same Jamaica shoot produced something far darker that almost nobody has ever talked about. If you're enjoying this, hit subscribe. Most of you watching right now aren't subscribed, and that's the one thing that tells YouTube to show you the next video. One tap? That's all it takes. Fact 11, McQueen jumped the cliff himself. The climactic cliff jump was filmed at Maui, Hawaii. A stunt coordinator was on standby with a double prepared and ready. McQueen waved him off and performed it himself, a genuine leap from height into open water with all the physical risk that entailed. He later called it one of the most exhilarating experiences of his life, which carries real weight coming from a man who raced motorcycles professionally, tested cars at high speed, and had spent his entire career performing his own action sequences whenever anyone would let him. The Hollywood Reporter's 2025 retrospective named Papillon as having the best stunts of any film released in 1973. What McQueen didn't know was that the story he was risking his life to tell was already being picked apart. Fact 12, the book was largely disputed. French authorities in French Guiana disputed Charrière's memoir almost immediately after publication. Their official position? He had been documented at Saint-Laurent-du-Maroni and may have escaped from there, but had never served time on Devil's Island itself as described in the book. The island has no rocky cliffs, as depicted in the novel and the film. It slopes gently into the surrounding sea. The broader historical view that developed over decades is that the memoir combined Charrière's own experiences with stories absorbed from other prisoners, assembled into a single, compelling narrative attributed entirely to himself. None of this changes the conditions it describes. The penal colonies were genuinely brutal places. The film's portrait of them stands regardless of exactly whose story it is telling. But hidden inside that portrait is a face most viewers never notice. Fact 13. Trumbo played a prison commandant. Dalton Trumbo appears uncredited in the finished film as a Devil's Island commandant, delivering the "France has disposed of you." For a man who had served 11 months in a real federal prison and been blacklisted by his own industry for over a decade, those words were considerably more than dialogue. They were a line he had effectively heard himself. Dustin Hoffman's then-wife Ann Byrne also appears uncredited in the opening sequence, as Dega's well-dressed wife seeing him off at the port. Two people with direct personal connections to the production, hidden in plain sight from the very first scene. But none of that prepared anyone for what the director achieved in the film's most powerful sequence without a single word. Fact 14. The greatest scene has no dialogue. The solitary confinement sequences contain almost no spoken words. Schaffner told them entirely through McQueen's physical performance, the way he moves through the cell, the way his body changes week by week, the slow deterioration that no dialogue could have communicated as effectively. Quentin Tarantino later called the moment McQueen sticks his head out of the cell door possibly the greatest serious acting moment in McQueen's entire career. A man not just physically unrecognizable, but appearing to have lost all connection to his former self. Tarantino also singled out the time cut that follows as one of the most powerful he had ever seen in any film. Both achieved without a single line of explanation. What Hoffman was doing to prepare was equally obsessive and stranger than most people know. Fact 15. Hoffman's glasses were unwearable. Hoffman spent weeks before production researching penal colony life, studying the social dynamics between prisoners, and developing Dega's physical details, including the thick-lensed glasses that became central to the role. The problem: the prescription lenses were so powerful, he could not actually see through them on set. The solution was corrective contact lenses worn underneath the frames, allowing him to maintain the character's appearance while being able to function. The AFI catalog confirmed the detail explicitly. The preparation stood in meticulous contrast to McQueen's more instinctive approach. But what the rest of the crew were doing to themselves off camera was something else entirely. Fact 16. The crew poisoned themselves. The Jamaica shoot reflected its era without restraint. On one particular occasion, crew members decided to boil marijuana down into a concentrated liquid and mix it into drinks at a party. The effect was substantially more powerful than anyone had anticipated. Several people became seriously ill, including director Franklin J. Schaffner himself, who was among the worst affected. The incident was remembered for years as one of the more chaotic episodes of an already chaotic production. Nobody appears to have repeated the experiment. And somehow, out of all that disorder, Jerry Goldsmith produced a score that Ennio Morricone himself later called his favorite, Fact 17, Goldsmith's fourth Schaffner score. The score, built around an accordion waltz that became one of the most recognized pieces of film music of the decade, was composed by Jerry Goldsmith. It was his fourth collaboration with Schaffner, following Planet of the Apes and Patton. The theme used Caribbean instruments for the tropical setting, but kept a mournful French quality that anchored it to the character's origins. It received the film's only Oscar nomination and lost to Marvin Hamlish for The Way We Were. It has since been cited as Ennio Morricone's favorite film score, and somewhere inside the film's most beautiful final image there is something hiding that nobody was supposed to see. Fact 18. A diver is visible. In the closing shot, Papillon floating free on his lack and the same in Savor with Benin Ezer by Grin and is visible in Daterji coconut bag raft as the ocean opens around him. A scuba diver is clearly visible beneath the surface directly below him. The diver was there as a standard safety precaution during a water sequence involving an actor, but was never successfully concealed from the camera. The error appears in every print of the film ever released and has been discussed by attentive viewers since 1973. It sits inside the most emotionally powerful and cinematically composed moment of the entire picture. Go back and watch it. You will never unsee it. And the film containing that moment was bigger at the box office than almost anyone now remembers. Fact 19. Fourth biggest film of 1,973. Papillon finished as the fourth highest grossing film of 1973 a year that included The Sting, American Graffiti, and The Exorcist. It earned over $22 million in U.S. domestic receipts and $60 million worldwide within its first year of release. Critics were largely unkind. Ebert dismissed it, Variety called it oppressive, multiple reviewers complained about the 2.5-hour running time. Audiences disagreed entirely and kept coming back for decades through television and home video. The critics have not been vindicated by time. The film is still in regular circulation more than 50 years after its release, still capable of silencing a room during McQueen's solitary scenes. What none of those critics knew was that the man at the center of it was already running out of time himself. Fact 20. McQueen's last great role. Papillon stands as the last major dramatic performance McQueen gave. Before the illness that ended his career and killed him at 50. He died in 1980 from mesothelioma, a cancer of the lung lining associated with asbestos exposure, contracted during years of working with the material on film sets and racetracks. His output after 1973 was sporadic and uneven. The Towering Inferno was a commercial success, but not a serious performance. Tom Horn and The Hunter, both released in 1980, showed a visibly ill man doing what he could with what time he had left. Papillon remains the film where McQueen pushed furthest as an actor, finding something in a man who refused to surrender that connected to something genuinely and deeply his own. He never made anything quite like it again. He didn't have time.